Nice to have you here. Just quick housekeeping. Just I think this morning went very well. We did fall behind in a couple areas, picked back up. Just a reminder to the board, questions, just try to stay focused on the projects themselves. We go along, look at Jim.
Are you looking at me?
Jim. And we'll stay on track and be able to finish up on time. I know I'm hard on Jim today. I really am.
What about Barbara?
Yeah. I'm going easy on Barbara today.
He likes you better.
Maybe we should put him next to one. They just wrote
Barbara,
And I find it
the
next.
stewardship got us.
I heard that. I heard that. Stewardship got.
I'm going to be telling my husband that.
We're gonna make a t-shirt.
He needs at least another nameplate.
So I'd like to welcome everybody back. Welcome to the applicants. We are just going to call you guys up. We're going to stay on track. You'll introduce yourselves as you come up and start the conversation. We're sticking to the 8-minute presentation. So if you go over, I'll give you the acts, and some board member will probably say,
And he's serious about that.
I'll give you some more time. So with that, welcome, and let's jump right into it. The first applicant that will be up is the Bittner project, and who from staff is? Me. So that's tab number 2 for those of you looking for the tab. As I try to put mine back together.
I know. I needed a little bit bigger binders.
The Bittner project is 165 acres in West Bath. That'll be a fee acquisition by the Kennebec Estuary Land Trust. Major land asset is recreation lands, and it connects to an existing trail network.
Can you hear me?
Update on
Mac, we can hear you. Sorry, Mac, we can hear you.
other end of town. And an update on access to this property. I have got a letter from the town of West Bath that they have agreed to grant access across abutting property to the north. So that'll be accessible from another land trust preserve to the north, across that town land. Take it away.
Thank you, Jason. My name is Tenley Elizabeth Worglitz, and I'm the Land and Stewardship Director at Kennebec Estuary Land Trust. And I'm joined here today by our Executive Director, Becky Kolak. We're here today to ask for LMF support in funding an important multifaceted conservation project called the Bittner property. As you can see on the map, the Bittner property is located in West Bath, right on the municipal boundary between West Bath and Bath. The property and the whole surrounding area have long been a conservation focus for Kelt, because it features 1,500 acres of undeveloped forest, wetlands, and streams that provide high-quality wildlife habitat.
Sorry to interrupt, but I cannot hear anything. This is Mac Hunter.
Okay, we've got Mac without any.
Do I need to speak up?
No, we don't.
No, we.
No, I'm unmuted. Can he not hear you? It's muted. It says muted.
I can hear now. I figured it out. Thank you.
You can hear now, Mac?
Yes.
Okay. So I will ask the applicant just to speak as loudly as you can.
Okay. Should I go back to the beginning?
Yes, please do. We won't penalize you at all.
It's very precise.
Yeah, you have 38 seconds back.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jason. My name is Tenley Elizabeth Worglitz, and I'm the Land and Stewardship Director at Kennebec Estuary Land Trust in Bath. And I'm here today with Becky Kolak, our Executive Director. We're here to ask for LMF support in funding an important multifaceted conservation project called the Bittner property. As you can see, can we go back to the first map? As you can see on the map, the Bittner property is located in West Bath, right along the municipal boundary between West Bath and Bath. This property and really the whole surrounding area have long been a conservation focus for kelp. because it features 1,500 acres of undeveloped forest, wetlands, and streams that provide high-quality wildlife habitat and unique recreational opportunities in the midst of a rapidly developing landscape. Locally, this area is referred to as the Lily Pond area, and it's been identified by the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife's Beginning with Habitat program as the largest remaining undeveloped habitat block in West Bath and Bath. The 165-acre Bittner property is at the very heart of this vitally important area of unfragmented habitat, and the property itself is highly ecologically diverse. Just like a keystone species, the Bittner property is the keystone of the Lily Pond area. Jason, oh, no, this is perfect. Thank you. To give you a sense of the land, it features rolling forested hills and numerous freshwater wetlands, including two that are particularly significant. The first is a large freshwater forested wetland in the north central portion of the property. It has a semi-open canopy that's dominated by red maple trees and extends onto several neighboring properties. There's also a large freshwater wetland along the eastern boundary. The southern 2/3 of this wetland have fairly dense vegetation and tall shrubs and trees. And then toward the northern end, the shrubs decrease and the trees become widely scattered and stunted. Over the weekend, I had a chance to go out and explore the northern, this eastern wetland rather, and it was filled with birds and bird song. The low vegetation at the northern end allows for views across to Kelt's Lozier Rogers Family Preserve, which shares a boundary with the Bittner property across the wetland, and it's simply stunning. In addition to the numerous wetlands, there are also several perennial and seasonal streams, and the property serves as an important water quality buffer to Barry's Mill Pond and Mill Cove to the west. In terms of the upland areas, the forest is quite diverse, with areas of oak pine forest, hemlock forest, red oak, northern hardwoods, white pine forest. And in the eastern part of the property, there's also a large area of white oak, red oak forest, which is classified as S3 in terms of state rarity. IF&W has also identified two large portions of the property as deer wintering areas. Conservation of the Bittner property would not only protect these natural communities from degradation or fragmentation, but it would also enhance the connectivity and ecological resilience of the whole Lily Pond area, which includes several existing conserved lands, including 3 preserves owned by Kelt and properties owned by the town of West Bath and the city of Bath. Now that I've given you a quick overview of the property's natural resources, I'll hand it over to Becky to discuss the recreational resources.
Thank you, Tinley. The Bittner property boasts over 3 miles of existing multi-use trails for motorized and non-motorized recreation. Currently, these trails are primarily stewarded by 2 highly invested project partners, the Six Rivers chapter of the New England Mountain Bike Association and the Over the Hill ATV Riders. The more recently built single track bike trails follow the ridged landscape in the northern part of the property, and the ATV trail network spans both the northern and southern portions. The trails on this property are a portion of a much larger trail network that spans over 20 miles, connecting into nearby conserved lands, including Kelt's Graves Preserve, which is to the north, and even farther north, the Kelt's popular Lily Pond Community Forest. The Bittner parcel has been accessed by neighbors, nearby residents, ATV riders, and mountain bikers for quite a few years. Currently, visitors, primarily folks that are just in the know of the trails being there, use this landscape as a resource to ride, walk, Nordic ski, snowshoe, and hunt. For being so close to a nearby downtown, when you get out into those woods, you really feel like you're out in the wild. The conservation of this conservation project is really a golden opportunity to prevent a well-used portion of an existing trail network from being severed, to formalize recreational access and trails, and to provide an avenue to welcome a wider audience of recreationalists in a populated and desirable region of Maine. And it's only 4 miles from downtown Bath. And this really adds to its appeal as a prime outdoor destination. There is eagerness shown by our local community members and local municipalities to see this property conserved, especially given the development pressures in coastal Maine communities at this time. There's also recognition of the value of this property and what it can bring to the region. For example, the Lily Pond area as a whole has become quite a hotspot for mountain biking, and we found that this type of recreation really is just increasing with popularity. Eagerness of our project partners to see this project happen is shown through the monetary support that we've seen through for the project by community members, as well as a keen interest by municipalities to create functional access by working with CELT to grant right-of-ways over municipally owned land, specifically the land that is owned by the town of West Bath to the north of the property, as well as a municipally owned lot that's owned by the city of Bath, which is off of Fairview Lane, which is to the southeast side of the property. Kind of in that area right there. This support from the community on top of the project's favorable acquisition price, and we'll have a full appraisal for this project by the end of this week on May 27th, adds to the value and viability of the project. Tinley and I sincerely thank the LMF board for consideration to conserve this property, and we sincerely hope to be able to partner with you to fulfill this acquisition project for the benefit of the Bath region. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions from the board, Jim?
Yeah, the accessibility question, obviously, what's going to be done to improve the accessibility of this? Is it from the adjoining properties, or is there some other plan?
So ideally, we are working on 2 avenues for accessibility. The first will be from the West Bath side, so being able to access it through CELT's existing legal right-of-way through the Grays Preserve across the town-owned land into the northern part of the property. And then
Could you just point that out? Point that out.
sure. It's a little so we have Austin Road here, which kind of goes behind this box here, but a bit further north, where Austin Road curves. There's an existing ATV trail, which is the legal access into CELT's Graves Preserve, which leads into Graves Preserve, which is right here. And there's an existing network of trails, both bike and ATV trails, that will work with the town of West Bath to create that right-of-way into the northern part of Bittner. We do have, as part of CELT's application, I think this is best shown on our recreational trails map that's included in our packet.
Thank you.
And then the second avenue of access is working with the city of Bath to gain right-of-way from the parcel that they own off of Fairview Lane, which is, you can kind of see the end of Fairview Lane and then kind of toward the southeast corner of the map. And again, that city-owned parcel is also marked on the maps within our application packet. We did include a letter of support from both municipalities.
And the issue off the road with DOT is just the lack of visibility if you were coming out, if a road was going there. Is that correct?
Yes, last December, the landowner, Bob Bittner, received a letter from Maine DOT denying his permit for a driveway because of the lack of sightline distance. It's this area of Berry's Mill Road is quite curvy and hilly, and there's apparently not sufficient sightline distance to create a driveway there. In addition, it the property drops very steeply away from Berry's Mill Road. And there's a large, an alder thicket down here. So there would be, in the course of our due diligence, we discovered that unfortunately it's not feasible to provide public access through that.
Is that a right of way or an actual fee ownership?
It's actual fee ownership. Yeah, but unfortunately not useful for public access.
Is this about stewardship?
If it is, we'd love to answer.
So I'm looking at your trail map, and I also noted in your application that you said you'll work with the ATV and mountain bike clubs to address any areas of erosion, et cetera. I'd like to know what et cetera is. And repair and reroute trails as necessary. And when I look at this piece, it's, wow, there are a lot of ATV trails that go in different directions. It's not just a through trail. The mountain biking trails seem to be in the top part of it. So I wonder if you could talk about that erosion, other problems that you're seeing, any intent to maybe narrow the corridors for where ATVs can go, and then also what kind of access would be available for pedestrians who, as you know, multi-use trails often mean it's the motorized use. It's hard for pedestrians to use the same trail.
Yeah, I think if we're able to acquire this property with LMF support, we would undertake a thorough assessment of all the trails, the ATV trails, the existing mountain bike trails, and assess them for issues like erosion. There definitely some wet areas where reroutes or possibly retiring sections of trails might be appropriate. And we would also look carefully at the deer wintering areas and try and balance that with the recreational trail system. So that would.
And do walkers use this at all right now? And
They do. It's definitely one advantage of doing field work in the winter was being able to observe all the tracks, human and animal, on the property. And I can attest that it is very well used by pedestrians as well as ATVs, mostly in the summer and fall. So pedestrians are definitely using the ATV and the mountain bike trails, as well as cross-country skiers, folks on ice bikes. It was very icy out there this winter. All sorts of reasons.
And CALT has long-lasting relationships with both the mountain bike and ATV clubs, which started when we conserved our Lily Pond Community Forest area. And we worked with the ATV club then. There were a lot of trails through that region to kind of narrow down, okay, where are the trails that riders are really using and where are some trails that maybe we can retire or, convert to non-motorized use. And then I have to say the over the hill riders have been incredibly receptive and just great partners to be able to work with to in that regard for stewardship.
Mac, I see your hand up.
Yes, most of my questions about access have been answered, but for one, am I correct that the access from the town of Bath property to the southeast would have a wetland in the way between there and the main part of the property?
Yes, so the wetland from Storrs Mill Pond, which is in kind of the northeast corner, does extend downward. And in doing our due diligence on the property, we did walk the length of the city of Bath owned property. And there is an existing trail, actually a pallet made bridging system across part of that wetland. And normally Kelt would not advocate building a trail through a wetland at all, but we feel like because there's this existing disturbance that then we can work with the city to rebuild, actually make safe and sustainable, that it could be one, great access into the preserve, and two, I come from a nature-based education background, a really exciting opportunity to create a spot for folks to actually come out and engage with a forested wetland.
I will add that based on aerial imagery, we could, and site visits, we could discern that there was perhaps in the past an ATV crossing in the northern section of the wetland as well that has now regrown. And one, by replacing the existing improvised boardwalk with a safer, sustainable structure, one advantage would be to limit impacts to that one area of the wetland, because there's clearly a history of desire to cross the wetland from the Bath side into the Bittner property, which is understandable. So we would use the opportunity to focus it in the impacts to one area. And I think, to echo what Becky said, it would be, I think, an incredible educational platform that's pretty rare to allow people to experience what it's like to stand in the middle of a forested wetland and hear the birds without trampling the plants as you go. So I think it could be a really unique educational opportunity for the citizens of the region.
Mac, does that answer your access questions?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Back to the board present. Any additional questions? Being none, thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. So we are going to move from Bittner to the Camp Guston proposal, which is tab 3 in your book. Well done.
Okay, Camp Guston is 95 acres in Sedatus, the acquired fee by the Androscoggin Land Trust. Major land asset is recreation lands, and this is a potentially relatively unique opportunity for primitive camping in developed portion of central Maine. Also, one scoring related update. The proposal that you all received did not contain a letter of support from the town of Sedatus. We have received that, so know that the town does support this project.
Thank you for being here this afternoon and listening to our presentation about Camp Guston. My name is Amy Dorval. I'm the Executive Director for Androscoggin Land Trust, and here with me today is Rick Spear. He's a board member of our Land Trust and our Lands Committee Chair. So today, I'd like to talk to you about this really special project. It's a really unique opportunity, and I think it's a unique opportunity to model something for the state, and I feel that if we are successful with this project, it will be a first. All across the United States, there are Boy Scout lands that have to be sold, unfortunately, because of the national sex abuse lawsuits. I've been learning that we are unique, and the Associated Press picked up our story when we put on our press release. There's very few conservation groups across the United States that are making an effort to not only protect the land for public use, but also work with the Scouts and other youth groups in the future going forward to maintain them on that land. So I think the important thing about this project that isn't mentioned is that we could be a model, not just for the state of Maine, but for the rest of our country. There are some really unique factors. It's right off of the interstate, off of 95. It's about 3 miles off the interstate. And it encompasses Loon Pond with about 1,200 or 1,800 square footage on the water body. 1,800. There's a lot of figures here. And there's lots of stream frontage, and then 15 acres on Curtis Bog, which is already a conservation area that we own in fee. And then beyond that, if you could flip to them. Beyond, so anyway, our Curtis Bog is beyond this boundary, and then beyond that, we have an easement with a private landowner. The property has freshwater, vulnerable forested and bog wetlands, upland wetlands, and a forested upland buffer. There are several flowing and intermittent streams, vernal pools, and wetlands, including that 15 acres on Curtis Bog. This property has the opportunity to protect undeveloped character of the property. The other thing we'd like to mention, as Jason had mentioned, is that there will be recreation opportunities that are not currently in our region. Primitive camping, there's, you know, campsites for people for RVs, but there's not a lot of opportunity for the public to recreate and have access to clean and pristine swimming and passive boating, which is, you know, canoes and kayaks. And there would be access for both Curtis Bog and Loon Pond. There's also a great potential for youth and education programs outside of the Scouts, and we have been communicating with other nonprofits in our region. We're also in a region where we're kind of an urban land trust. So we work with other youth groups, Tree Street Youth, Healthy Androscoggin, and several other groups that support us. Sorry. There are 10 primitive campsites on this property, and we hope to maintain them. There is an existing reservation system, but we're looking into other systems to help reserve that. And there's a waterfowl and wading bird habitat, deer wintering habitat. And sorry, do you want to step in and?
Just underscoring a couple of things that Amy said. The project's very unique with our MOU that we have with the Pine Tree Council of the Boy Scouts, because we'll maintain their access to the property, but they have it wide open for public access. And our partnership here with the Bureau of Parks and Lands is enabling us to expand the reservation system. So the Boy Scouts will have some first dibs early in the season, but after that, it's wide open to everyone, and it will not be restricted. And we also want to underscore the development pressures here. It's 3 miles from exit 86, the Sabatis Turnpike exit. This upland and shore frontage on Loon Pond is very attractive to developers, and we're so appreciative the Boy Scout Council could have gone out and sold it on the public marketplace, and it would have went like that. We're so appreciative that they've been working with us to try and come up with a solution here.
And this actually has been a really long process for us. It's been almost 2 years that we've been working with the Pine Tree Council and coming to a finalization and working towards these goals. And I think it's kind of decades long too. There's been several iterations of the Pine Tree Council wanting to sell this property for a variety of reasons. And we're again thankful that they're allowing us to continue. We also have, and not just with the town of Sabatis, we have support from the Gustin family, who was not supportive of past efforts to sell the property. They are extremely pleased that we are attempting to purchase and manage this property. We've had letters of support from them, and last week we had an in-person fundraiser where I think the entire family showed up, and so that was really exciting to see that level of support. And it's important for me to be able to have win-wins for everybody, not just for us, but for the community, for the public, for the Gustin family, for the town of Sabatis. Sorry, excuse me. I'm trying to think of some other really important details to mention. We have other letters of support from other organizations. The Loon Pond residents, they, a lot of them have some conservation backgrounds, or they don't want to see development. And so we have Loon Pond residents, local businesses, and the Gustin family for support.
And do we have time? Another minute remaining?
No, I'm not going to cut you short. You'll know when you.
So unfortunately, because of the scale of the map, that focuses on the Camp Gustin property. But as Amy said, we have 334 acres of conserved land to the north, including part of that side of Curtis Bog. And it's been challenging because it's been difficult to provide public access to that lane. Theoretically, it's there, but they have, the public has to go through a gate. And just to be able to offer hand carry public access, canoe launch, kayak launch on the pond itself, but also will finally give us a way to access Curtis Bog and create a trail system up to the north on circumventing the bog there. So we're very hopeful that with LMF support and our current fundraising that we'll have this in place.
And it is a little bit magical for me when you're there. It's a quintessential like Maine camp with tall pines and hemlocks and the water glistens. And then when you start to go back into Curtis Bog, it's just equally as beautiful and special within its own right. So I think it's a special place to protect for ecological reasons for youth and for the public.
Great, thank you very much. Oh, you can ask questions.
Jump right in.
Could you ask this, could you, do I ask you or him?
Go ahead.
Could you identify yourself and your affiliation?
So my name is Rick Spear,
Thank you.
and I'm a board member of ALT and also chair of the Lands Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Jim first.
Yeah, will there be a any kind of continuing emphasis on the youth side of this? I mean, it was Boy Scouts that were primarily maybe solely using it, I don't know, but.
No.
No.
So we're working, we have an MOU with the Boy Scouts so they can continue their historical camping access there and all the other scouting activities that they do. But we're also going to be working with other youth camping groups or youth groups. So for instance, I recently was, St. Mary's Nutrition has a youth program and they've reached out to us about a Learn to Fish program that we've done with them in the past. And when I told them that this is a project we're working towards, and it might be safer than being on the Androscoggin River, which is not a fast moving river, but it can change at times depending on Brookfield's releases. So I think this is a safer place for young youth to learn to fish. So there's a variety of people in youth groups that are interested in this project.
Sure. Could you talk a little bit about your long-term plans for camping and trails within the mapped wildlife resource areas?
It's not on this map, but it was on a map, I think that that's in the packet, but there are 10 sites that are, closer to where this is a parking area here, and then there's another parking area here. But there's a few primitive camping sites dotted around this area. And you can't see it on the map, but there are some old logging roads that they're currently being used as trails, and we'd like to further develop into a better trail system around that area. And then that trail system does go into the other conservation areas that we own and manage. Does that answer your question?
Amy, would these trails be non-vehicular trails?
Yeah, no vehicles.
No vehicles.
There is a gate. There's already a gate there.
So these are walking. Would you allow mountain biking, or are these mainly pedestrian, walking, hiking?
Mountain biking would be allowed.
Non-motorized.
Except in the winter. There is an existing agreement with a snowmobile club, and I don't think it goes. I think their trails don't go this way, but it does cut through parts of the property. But it's yeah.
Segment. Yeah. And then I just had a few questions on the MOU.
Mm-hmm.
So the draft that you put in here seems to suggest it's a term of a certain number of years. Is that correct? That it starts at a certain time and ends at a certain time?
It will be year to year, and
you would have to reauthorize this on a year-to-year basis, the ALT board. Is that correct?
That's the tentative agreement. We've thought about, doing like a 5 or 10 year term. We haven't really come to a conclusion about that, but it's very fluid, and we're agreeable to working that out with them.
You would give ALT a chance to review how things are going. So there'd be some kind of term that then you would get a chance.
Yeah, and we don't have similar agreements like this. We do have farm lease agreements. So we're used to that process of working with another entity and working out.
And so the dates are to be determined when you would give them, is it like first right of refusal to use the campsites? Is that what we're talking about?
It will be by reservation system. And then what we had discussed is that there are a few key dates that are really important to them, the Jamboree. And so we would try to accommodate that.
Opportunity
Yes.
for those. And do you pay for your tent sites? Is there? am I
We're
correct?
seeking to get a donation at this point.
Costs of maintenance and things like that.
Yeah, and we have a pretty robust volunteer base within our organization, and our new stewardship director, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. She was being cautious with COVID, and she's a go-getter, and she's I think she's going to increase our volunteer capacity, which is already it's really nice. So
I would just point out, LMF does have precedence in working on a similar scenario with this, where there's a relationship with a camp. So we've worked through that mechanism before, so we have a method to do that. Right?
So I just had two follow-up questions, and I don't remember seeing in the packet, but will hunting be allowed on the property?
yes.
Okay. And how do you foresee that with primitive camping?
Well, I don't know if it exactly on that property, but it's definitely allowed on the other conservation lands that we currently own. Again, that's something we're gonna have to figure out. This is new to us.
But for the property that you're requesting LMF funding for today?
I don't know what the stipulations would be. We would allow it if it's possible, but if it's not possible, because of the camping, it depends on the time of year as well. Yeah.
Can I add something, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Okay, just in talking with Amy about the project earlier, that was one of the things that we discussed. And her thought was that camping would primarily be from like Memorial Day to Labor Day, and so wouldn't overlap as much with the hunting season.
Thank you. I was sensitive to that because I know that the people are camping there, and people may not feel comfortable camping if they're hunting, but there are, like I said, it depends on the time of year, but we are open to suggestions and going forward, but definitely fishing, and birding and other recreation activities should be encouraged.
Okay, and then I just have one other question. I noticed in your application also you said that no commercial timber harvest will be allowed on the site, but do you plan to allow harvest for wildlife or habitat management as necessary, or is this sort of a?
If that's appropriate with the Bureau of Parks and Lands. We do have other pieces of land, and there already has been a significant before, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, there was a timber harvest there previously. But there might be some other ecological reasons that we might have to perform timber harvest, as you suggest.
One last,
Oh, I think it's,
go ahead, Bob.
Jim and then, well, go ahead.
Your choice.
Well, Jim, you beat him out. You beat him. So Jim, you go and then Bob.
Never mind. Are the campsites pretty much clustered around the parking areas then?
there's several that are close, and then there's a few scattered kind of going up in this way. And I think there might be one like up in that corner, but I'm not sure because I don't have that map in front of me right now. But yes, primarily around this area.
Will there be a separate entity, Camp Guston versus Androscoggin Land Trust? I mean, are they one and the same from here on out? Or it sounds like with the way you're dealing with it, there's going to be two separate entities involved. Is that?
Well, because we would take ownership, that we would still keep the historical name Camp Guston, and I feel like that's important to the family and to the scouting community that currently has used it. But it would be Androscoggin Land Trust.
Can you help me figure, is this part of Sabatis Stream, the water, part of the watershed, where does this drain out of or into? You got Sabatis Pond, which is to
There
the
is
north.
some drainage and it deals with, from Sabatis Pond,
Yeah.
I think down. And I'd have to look at the map and the delineation to tell you that.
And I haven't fully looked at it lately, but Spanish Pond is up here and Spanish Stream drops down to,
And that would connect back into Sabatis.
it might, this whole area kind of, actually drains towards the turnpike.
Yeah.
And then it cuts around and I'm not sure how they interconnect, but, I wanted to say Guston Stream, but, Curtis Stream.
Curtis,
Oh, yeah,
Um,
Curtis Stream.
Curtis Stream would go back into Sabatis Stream. I was just wondering if it was out.
Pond,
Yeah.
But I don't have that in my
I've
head.
got L lines on the brain all the time.
Good reason.
Yeah, so, okay, Barbara.
I think it said in the application, there's one camp on Loon Pond. Did it say that? I'm just wondering, how pristine Loon Pond is.
I don't know the exact count of camps, but there are, like, starting here, there are a couple of camps, and then I know there's a couple more, but it's not many.
That the water quality is high, is it?
It is high. There, I believe there are salmon in there. There's nesting loons there. I would hope so. Hope they didn't leave.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate the time.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah. We're gonna move right along to Johnson Brook, which is tab 8 in the workbook.
Johnson Brook is 56 acres via fee acquisition by the Kittery Land Trust. The land asset is open space. And this is a,
Yeah, we can really hear you.
oh, I'm sorry.
This room, we can't hear you in this room, yeah.
So this is a 56 acre fee acquisition by the Kittery Land Trust. The major land asset is open space. And this is part of the Mount Agamonicus to the Sea corridor. Go away.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Linehan. I'm the Executive Director of the Kittery Land Trust. I'm grateful to be here for today. I'm so happy to see this LMF program up and running again. And thank you for all your time. I know it's a long day for you guys. As Mark Twain once said, when you buy land, they're not making it anymore. This statement could not be more accurate in today's real estate climate. There's a lack of inventory and an intense pent-up buyer demand. Local residents and local land trusts are now competing with out-of-state cash buyers who are paying above the asking price. This trend has been ongoing since the pandemic began 2 years ago, and it is causing a general sense of anxiety in the York County market. According to the Maine Association of Realtors, real estate prices have increased 21.43% in York County since this time last year. Madeline Hill, president of the Maine Association of Realtors, stated Maine's quality of life and the emergence of teleworking has resulted in unprecedented demand for Maine real estate in the past 2 years. In Kittery, this is amplified. Not only do we offer Maine's quality of life for those who wish to work remotely, we're also a place with easy travel to the major cities to our south. For instance, it takes me half the time to get to Boston than it took for me to get to Augusta today. Because of this intense market and the quality of life in Kittery, many landowners are cashing in on the demand and selling out to developers. However, there are still some owners who would rather work to preserve their property instead of seeing a cluster subdivision replace their wild landscape. This is why I'm here today. Last fall, the Sisk family approached the Kittery Land Trust. They own 56 acres that border Kittery and York. The owners have explained to us at length that they don't want to sell to a developer, but they're really depending on funds from sale of the land to support their retirement needs. If the Kittery Land Trust is not able to secure preservation of this property in the near future, it's likely they will turn to a developer. The CIS property has been on the Kittery Land Trust for decades. It has been listed as a high priority parcel for our acquisitions committee because of its ability to provide connectivity to other preserved lands and its ample natural resources. You can see on our map, on the last one, that it is a missing puzzle piece. It is a missing puzzle piece of connectivity in our region. The 56 acres of undeveloped land would directly link 500 acres of conserved land in both Kittery and York. It directly abuts the 58.6 acre Meadows at Dolly Gordon Brook Conservation Easement in York and the 176 acre Norton Preserve in Kittery. The Norton Preserve then abuts the 200 acre Fuller Forest in York. These preservation projects are also in close proximity to the 100 acre Brave Boat Harbors Preserve in Kittery, the Rachel Carson Natural Wildlife Refuge at the Brave Boat Harbor, and other lands conserved by the York Land Trust near the York River. Collectively, these properties provide connectivity to 1,800 acres of preserved land. The property contains undeveloped woodland and marsh with 54 acres in Kittery and 2 acres in York. It has many mapped natural resources which support vital ecological and conservation functions. Johnson Brook and its smaller tributaries flow to Dolly Gordon Brook, a major tributary of the York River. The 56 acre acquisition includes 2,830 linear foot of wild brook trout habitat along Johnson Brook and its tributaries. It contains 20.5 acres of inland waterfowl and wading bird habitat and 27 acres of freshwater emergent and forested shrub and wetlands. The upland is predominantly oak mixed with hardwood forest with smaller white pine and hemlock clusters. Deer and deer signs are very prevalent within the property. A woods road, a small cemetery, stone walls, and remnants of a granite foundation are the only apparent human impacts within the proposed 56 acre acquisition. Public use of the property would include hunting, fishing, trapping, hiking, bird watching, and educational opportunities. The public will not be allowed to use motorized vehicles. The only improvements anticipated on the land are signage and bog bridges in wet areas along existing trails. Access for the public and stewardship is across Kittery Land Trust Norton Preserve via Norton Road, a public way. As mentioned, the acquisition of this property has been a high interest of the Kittery Land Trust for many years, as well as many community partners. The Johnson Brook CIS Preserve project has received enthusiastic letters of support from the town of Kittery, the town of York, the Mount Agamenticus to the Sea Conservation Initiative, and the York River Study Committee. Protecting undeveloped properties within the headwaters of the York River is consistent with many recommendations and resource protection objectives presented in the York River Watershed Stewardship Plan. The property is also located within the Mount Agamenticus to the Sea Conservation Initiative's focus area. The land would be cared for by the Kittery Land Trust Stewardship Committee. Each property that the Kittery Land Trust owns is assigned its own steward and undergoes annual monitoring and ongoing maintenance. KLT will obtain fee simple ownership of the land. The funds we are requesting are based on the opinion value from a local realtor. Currently, we have contracted with Legacy Appraisal Services, and our appraisal will be conducted by Jesse Studley later this spring. The Kittery Land Trust has undertaken many ambitious projects since it was founded 35 years ago. KLT has conserved almost 1,000 acres of important woodlands, wetlands, farmland, and coastlands in all parts of town. Our Brave Boat Headwaters project was partially funded with LMF grant and has become one of our flagship properties. KLT is backed by an active board of directors, over 100 volunteers, a supportive community, and a cooperative town government. As a community conservation project, The addition of this 56-acre CIS preserve presents a chance to enhance connectivity of open space in one of the most desirable real estate markets in Maine. This land represents the possibility of linking contiguous habitat and recreational lands. Today, you have the opportunity to help protect this important resource in our state. Thank you for considering this project, and I'm happy to try and answer your questions.
Before I let Jim ask you a question, I gave you 5 more points for living closer to Boston.
Yeah, you mentioned the future for development. Obviously I can see that. Is it likely that development could actually occur? There looks to be some wetlands that bisect a portion of the property.
Yeah, there are some wetlands. There's also a neighborhood right here, Woodside Meadow. And the current owners, the CIS family, are getting a legal opinion from their lawyer. They believe that there's legal access for them to come in and develop this whole area right here. So we think that their
If they
appraisal,
were to purchase it.
we think their appraisal price will come in different once they have that legal opinion from their lawyer.
So if the appraisal price comes in, because I noticed that the $95,000 total project cost does seem quite low for this area. So
Yes.
if the appraisal were to come in and say that, looks like it's 22 acres of wetland, so if the 40 or 30 acres of land is, you have a legal access to that, and now the appraisal comes in at $350,000. You have the means to make up that difference.
We would be trying to adjust our price with the Land for Maine Future Board and coming back to you with our appraisals. That's why we're hoping to have it done very shortly. And we do have other funding. We have a fund with the Maine Community Foundation for acquisitions. So we'd be drawing some money from that as well and doing fundraising and other applying for other grants.
Barbara.
And to follow up on Commissioner Camuso's question, I noted you mentioned the Wharton Trust.
Yes.
You have a proposal in to get your match money from them. Do you have any update from the Wharton?
We
Trust?
did not receive funding from them.
You did not.
No.
So
We did not have a final project cost at that time when we applied, but they do have another deadline in the fall and they've invited us to apply then.
So plan B, if you don't get it again for your match monies, would
Is to
be-
use our cash reserves with the Maine Community Foundation. We also, you can see on our balance sheet, we have cash savings that can be used for that.
you feel you're secure with being able to match it. And just one other question about the CIS family. It would appear that not only are they keeping their home and the surrounding lands, but they've reserved another lot. It's up in the inland waterfowl and wading bird habitat. Can that be developed? Is that a?
They have no access to that from the frontage. On the other side of that, it eventually goes out to Route 1, near where the outlets are, and they do not have legal access to out there.
So that little up in the half moon, you know where it is? That's what they're reserving, correct?
Yes, up there.
And why are they reserving that if there's no access to it?
We're not entirely sure.
Yeah. It'd be nice to protect that. Has
It would.
waterfowl and
Yeah.
bird,
Yeah.
values.
Yeah, I mean, they had talked that maybe they would build a retirement place for themselves there and sell their home, but we really don't even think that that is possible.
You don't feel they have access to it? I mean, legal
No,
access to it?
no, they would have to cross through other parcels that they don't have a right of way through.
Any other hands? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. So we're moving right along to Thayer Brook, which is 17, tab 17.
Mrs. Thayer Brook is there.
147 acres, a fee acquisition by the Royal River Conservation Trust. The major land asset is land supporting vital ecological functions. Habitat, the project highlights, I had to mention the important habitat for those great blue herons. Thank you. Take it away, Adam.
Thank you. So I'm Adam Pereira. I'm the Conservation Director at Royal River Conservation Trust. We service 7 towns in the Royal River watershed, if you aren't familiar. So Yarmouth, North Yarmouth, Pownell, New Gloucester, Gray, Durham, and Auburn. And historically, most of our conservation has happened in Yarmouth, North Yarmouth, New Gloucester, and Pownell. And in Gray, which is where this project is located, we only have 1 conservation easement in the town, no fee simple ownership. And that trend also follows in terms of the overall conserved lands. In Gray, which you can kind of see in the, sorry, if you go back 1 slide, you can kind of see in this map just the lack of green space around where our project is. Like many of our towns, Gray has a sizable population. It's quickly growing. It's halfway in between Lewiston and Auburn and Portland. From county in Maine, which is Cumberland County right now. And so that lack of conserved lands and public access in Gray is just one aspect as to why we're really, really excited about this project. For wildlife, for recreation and public access, and also for education as well. So a little bit of an overview. We acquired this property back in March, 147 acres, fee simple, and that really was the result from decades of relationship building of Libby Hill Forest, who abuts us. They're a past LMF project. They have about 150 acres. Some are conserved lands, some are just recreation lands. Their entire 150 acres all has trails going through it. So we'll be joining that project to create about 300 acres of conservation recreation lands. And really the timing of the project couldn't be more opportune. So we recently this year put out our conservation plan, which highlights this area as one of 2 of our highest priorities in Gray. The town also released a open space plan, the first open space plan ever in April. And they did that because they wanted to accelerate the pace of land conservation and open space in their town. And it's also located in their open space plan. Our project is within one of their 3 critical rural areas that they've identified in the town. And Libby Hill gets a lot of special attention in their open space plan and their comprehensive plan, just because of how valuable a community resource that this is. And just one reason as to why it's a critical rural area in Gray. This project is within a 2,500 acre habitat block, which is somewhat unusual in Greater Portland. It's in fact the 5th largest in Greater Portland, which we categorize as about 20 different towns. And then directly north of it, you can see it, large and green there is Morgan Meadow Wilderness Management Area. That's another large block of habitat that's only separated by 1 road. Further north, there's the Shaker Conservation Easement and some Maine woodland owners acreage. So there's a lot of conserved land, there's a lot of undeveloped land, and with that vision and regional context, with the timing of this project, with some local plans, and also with the specific qualities of our project, we really, really see this as a catalyst for more land conservation in Gray. And so we're looking forward to that and are very confident in more projects occurring in Gray because of this project and the timing. So some specific highlights of the parcel itself. It has one of the largest great blue heron colonies in inland colonies in Maine. It has about 28 nesting pairs on average per year. The herons have been there since 2008 or so. And typically inland colonies have around 11 or 12 nesting pairs. So this is really significant. This is really large. It's important because on the coast, populations have decreased by about 90% since the 1980s. So if we can protect some inland habitat, I think that's pretty important. So that's one element of it, is the great blue herons. A second element is the public access and trails. So you can see down at the southern edge of our parcel, we'll be putting in a 10 to 20 parking lot there. Has really good access. There's a log yard there that we're going to be converting to a parking lot in the summer. And it really opens up this preserve and the Libby Hill Forest Trail network to the other side of town and to neighboring towns on the western side. If any of you have driven through Gray's Village Center, it can get a little congested there. And so the trails, so Libby Hill Forest has about 8 miles of trails. We'll be adding several miles to those trails. There is an existing multi-use trail with snowmobilers and ATVs that we'll be keeping on there, and it stays a good distance away from the heron colony. It also is somewhat of a regional destination for mountain biking. During the winter time, a lot of cross-country skiers, a lot of walkers, a lot of birders, those sorts of things. Races are run here both during the summer and the winter time. And also it's a scenic area. There aren't many areas in our watershed where you can go and, all places are inspiring, but big, vast open spaces. And when you walk through the woods here and you get out to the wetland, it's about 60 acres. It's big and open, and it's very inspiring and spectacular. And it's abundant with a lot of the charismatic species, the great blue herons, flying around. And so it's really inspiring, which is another reason why we're really excited about this project, is because the schools use Libby Hill Forest and part of our property very often. If I had more than 8 minutes, I would go through and read the survey that the MSAD 15 superintendent did of the school use of both the middle school and the high school, which are neighbors to our property. The middle school is just up kind of where the legend is on the map. But there are PE classes out there all the time. The science classes are out there all the time. Special education, alternative education. Everyone is using Libby Hill Forest Trails, and it's a real gem in the community, which is I could touch on a few different things, but I have a minute remaining. We acquired the property in March, and we've been doing a lot of stewardship and management. We'll have an interim management plan done in the next month or so. And we really want to make sure that we protect the herons and make sure that any recreational impacts don't disturb them. So we're getting on top of our management, our stewardship now. And we also, like I was mentioning before, we really see this as a catalyst for more conservation in Gray. So we really want to demonstrate excellence in how a property can be managed, stewarded, and accessible to the public. In terms of readiness, our appraisal, we'll have it by August 31st at the latest. And we already did a restricted use appraisal. And I can touch more on that during Q&A if you'd like. But I think I'll leave it there. I guess I'll just close it with that. The community members of Gray are no choice. The community members of Gray are really excited about this project, as are we, and I'm happy to have shared the project with y'all.
Great, thank you very much for the presentation. Judy.
Thank you, Commissioner. So as you mentioned, I'd just like you to elaborate a little bit on your plans. Great blue herons are quite sensitive to disturbance, and they arrive back in Maine in about mid-April, and they will be in the rookery well into the end of August. And so you've also referenced buildings. From what I can see on this map, I'm assuming that the rookery is toward the middle of this property. So how does that jive with several more miles of access? And, obviously we would have significant concerns with any additional access or intrusion into that rookery.
Yeah, that's a really important question. For one, we're going to defer to IFNW for much of the management recommendations. They've been monitoring the heron colony weekly since maybe 2008, 2009. I could be getting that wrong, maybe 2014. We have a strong relationship with them, our LMF project agreement, whatever we want to write into it. We want to protect the herons. A couple of the things that we're doing. So we are working on building a connector trail that stays away from the heron colony.
How far away?
I don't know the exact distance, but it might be about 200, 250 feet from the wetland. And there's currently an observation point on Libby Hill Forest land at the top of sort of up here. And so what we're doing is we're putting signs up along the connector trail that skirts along the wetland with signs that say sensitive wildlife area, keep your dogs on leash. The entire parcel will have their dogs on leash. And we'll divert people to that one viewpoint, which has been there before the herons have arrived. They actually built their nest when people were already using that trail on Libby Hill Forest land. So that alleviates, that's kind of what we're doing right now and what we plan on doing in terms of walkers and pedestrians and bikers with that connector trail. And then in terms of the ATV and snowmobile use, the snowmobiles, obviously, the herons aren't there during the winter time. And then the ATV trail, actually, it only goes through our property about halfway. And before it gets to the wetland, it goes off to the right side here and goes off of our property. So there's adequate distance there. Yeah, so we feel good about it. I might have said it in the beginning. But Libby Hill Forest is pretty busy in terms of recreation, and we view our parcel as more of the quiet side of Libby Hill and providing a different way to experience those woods.
Jim, did you buy this at a bargain sale or did you pay fair market value based on it?
Yeah, so our restricted use appraisal estimated the parcel at 160 acres and it appraised at 139,000. We ended up paying 130,000 and the actual parcel size is 147 acres. So there's some math there, but it comes down to almost the same dollar amount per acre. And then, yeah, by August 31st, we'll have our full appraisal.
Any other questions? Barbara?
In your estimate of your management costs and so forth, I see 140,000.
Yeah.
And is that in hand or?
We're actually getting pretty close to having all that money in hand. So with LMF funding, with NACA funding, we'll be getting close to that figure. And a lot of the funds actually are anticipated stewardship costs are being covered with different community partners. So Libby Hill, the Great Community Endowment, we're working with them on some projects right now on a bridge. Also the snowmobile and ATV clubs, we have a 5-year partnership with them right now. And so they're investing in kind of the old bridges that have been needing to have some work for quite a while and fixing some of the ruts in the multi-use trail and that type of thing. So the more cost-intensive stewardship items are being cost shared with our partners. And then we used bridge financing to acquire this property back in March because it was time sensitive. And so if we receive LMF funds and we're confident that we're going to receive NACA funds as well, then the bridge financing funds, half of those can be rolled over to stewardship. So.
Was that TPL or CF funding or just commercial?
It was private funding from a donor who cares about this place.
Great. Seeing no other hands, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Great project. And moving right along, we're going to go to the last one in the block, which is tab 18, the condo project.
Condo project, 57.2 acres, a fee acquisition by the Harpswell Heritage Land Trust, major land asset lands supporting vital ecological functions. There's actually wild honeysuckle, which is a rare plant species on this land. Take it away, Lee.
I'm not going to recite all the details of the other land. It's laid out very clearly, I think, in the application. I would like to say that this doesn't show about 190 acres of land that's been conserved in the last 5 years because we don't keep up to date with state GIS systems. Can you switch to the next slide? Also, the project doesn't show this, correctly show this perennial stream right here. That stream
Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to really speak up.
doesn't correctly show the perennial stream here. It runs like this, past this wild honeysuckle and this one into the bay, not off like that. And there's about 5 acres of wetland, forested wetland associated with that stream. Given all that, this is a really interesting project for us. Since Harpswell adopted a open space plan in 2009, we've had as our highest priority the conservation of lands within those open space focus areas. We identified 9 focus areas plus all the offshore islands. This is the Brickyard. This particular project is in the Brickyard watershed, and this is the first time we've had any chance at a project in the Brickyard watershed. And we have this chance only because the owners who inherited it from their mother a few years ago, 5 siblings, really wanted to see it conserved. It also needs some money, and so we negotiated a deal with them, and they agreed to sell it at a 70% discount from the appraisal last year. The most recent updated appraisal actually is even a greater discount. It's now about a 75% discount. Otherwise, we would not be able to undertake the project because we had raising $500,000. As everyone here at the table can attest, takes time and effort and a lot of energy for small organizations. If we dipped into our reserves right now, we could close immediately upon LMF approval if that was granted. But we prefer to raise all the money if we can from new donations. And so we are proposing, even though we have the appraisal in, we have a survey in, we have a purchase and sale agreement. We have the DOT interest permit. We have the Harpswell Planning Board site plan review for our parking area. All that's ready to go. We could close it a few days after an LMF award was made. We're going to wait until October to do that because we plan to finish out our campaign at the end of September. Hopefully, we'll actually raise more than needed. We could use the money for some other project. You can see from the budget, we've made a very generous allowance for stewardship. In fact, because of the recent effort of, we have to spend a lot more money developing a parking area than we ultimately are going to have to do based upon a recent approval. So that's going to increase our stewardship funding by a considerable amount that's available for long-term maintenance of this project and others, because everything is combined into a single fund. Our primary motivations for this were to protect the waters, Quahog Bay, the water quality and the marine resources, especially the shellfish resources and lobsters. Quahog Bay, as you can see from that nautical chart included in the application, is a shallow bay with narrow entrances and is susceptible to low oxygen because of its warmer waters and because of its limited flushing. There's also, if you could look at the wildlife map, you can see from the lot sizes, it's very densely developed in most of the shorefront. We've had a long-term project, which we call the Quahog Bay Project, of trying to prevent further development along the shores of the bay. And this particular project offers us a half a mile of undeveloped shorefront. The opportunity to preserve a half a mile of undeveloped shorefront. It also allows Harpswell, because of its unusual geography. Maybe we can go back to the previous slide. Because of its unusual peninsular geography like this and this and this, you're never more than a half a mile from the ocean in Harpswell, wherever you are. And there are not very many large lots in Harpswell. The largest is 210 acres in the whole town. We've had an easement on that lot for 25 years. This is one of the last remaining large lots. And an example of the kind of demand which people decided today. There was a 40-acre property across the road from this property right here, which we would like to conserve, but it never came on the market. The owners never approached us, but a developer approached the owners and made them an offer they couldn't refuse. And it was subdivided almost instantly, without anyone else having a chance to do anything about it. This is very typical. Usually you see about 15 to 20 pieces of property of land in Harpswell on the market. You see maybe 25 or 30 houses. We're down to about 25% of that level. And they don't stay on the market very long, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So the urgency is really, if we are not able to acquire this property, what's going to happen is they're going to have to sell it for development because they need to realize some financial benefit. They're willing to sacrifice a lot of that benefit in order to see it conserved, but they cannot give it to us, which of course is always the preferred solution. So protecting the waters of Quahog Bay is one thing. The other thing is large block habitats. Because of this insular geography, there aren't very many large block habitats in Harpswell. There are only 4. And this is one of the largest. There are about 100 acres next door to this property, which we believe could be added to this property because of the lack of access from any other decent road for development purposes. Unless we get started with this one, we're not going to be able to approach those owners at all. But that large block habitat is rare. It's unusual in Harpswell. It supports species. I think we said 11 species of special conservation concern or greatest conservation concern. It also offers a remarkable topography. It runs up rather steeply. So at the top of it, we believe with a bit of judicious thinning, we'll have a view of Quahog Bay from the top of the property. We will also have a nice trail, but I want to also point out that when we build trails, we don't cover preserve all the trails we possibly can build. We try to set aside our larger preserves, areas specifically reserved for wildlife to stay away from trail users. Now, all of our trails, of course, are non-motorized, but pedestrian only, because they are not very long. We don't have long trails. The longest trail in Harpswell is only 1.5 miles, and that's owned by the town. We have trails as short as 1/4 mile, in fact, because that's what's possible. All of our trails are built, designed, built, laid out, and maintained by volunteers, because we have some very avid trail builders, very experienced trail builders in Harpswell. 1 minute remaining. So I mentioned the 2 primary purposes: conserving large block habitat, protecting waters of Quahog Bay. The other purpose, of course, is to provide outdoor recreation opportunities with a trail. And I laid out a potential trail or a concept for a trail system. We don't know exactly how we're going to do it until we get out there and actually work it. But we don't spend time and effort on doing these things unless we actually own the property. That would be it, unless you have questions.
Great, thank you very much. I'll start off with a question just around access for shellfish harvesting.
Yeah, we're not anticipating that because the access from this Mill Cove here is much easier from Tondro Point than it is from our side of the cove. It's a rather steep drop off there. And clam diggers, when they come up with 200 pounds of clams, they'd rather not haul it up a steep drop off. If they
So they can access from the developed side?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
But that's why we didn't cite it as a primary reason for doing this. We do undertake projects specifically to protect clamming and provide access to clammers. This is not one of those.
Yeah, I bet you need his name. Yeah, I thought of that earlier.
I have your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Reed Coles. I'm the
Reed Cole.
the stewardship director for the Harpswell Land Trust.
Thank you.
Judy.
Hey, can you just talk about the private road that kind of bisects the property and how the management of that will be and the public's access, or what, how you sort of going to manage that private road in the middle of a public access area?
Provide public access directly off Route 24, the state Route 24, which is right here. This private road serves this subdivision here, which is an older one, and 2 new subdivisions down here. And they have a right of way to use it, so there's not much we can do, but it's a gravel road. It's relatively narrow. It's only about 13 to 14 feet wide. We're not planning to allow any public access via that road, much to the gratitude of the neighbors, I should say. And we don't believe, because of the light use of that road, that it has any significant effect on the value of the land as wildlife habitat.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that.
We don't believe that the relatively light use of that road has a significant effect on the value of the overall piece of property as wildlife habitat.
No, I was worried more about sort of irritating the people who own the road and that
That's
suspect
been
people
an
are
issue.
gonna take
And
that
that's
nice
one
easy
reason why
path,
we
gravel road to walk on rather than some other area.
One reason we moved ahead to get permission to build a parking area is we wanted to guarantee to the owners that we could provide access. And it would be right here, after the Harpswell community on the school driveway, where we can just barely squeeze a parking lot in, as large a parking lot as we wish to build there. We did this because a number of the neighbors from whom we're hoping to raise money said we won't do it unless you can guarantee you access off the main road, which we now have done just in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you, Reed. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
So that concludes that block. We had 5 presentations during that period, and so we are running a little bit over. I'd like to switch out as quickly as we can, but take probably just a 2-minute break. What do they call them, bio break now?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Bonnie Bag. Deal Bonnie Bag, like DONNIE, Bonnie Bag.
Bonnie? Okay, is that you?
That's us.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're gonna jump right into it for Bonnie Bay Mountain Recreational Area in North Berwick. And who from staff? Flora. Speak up, Flora, because the longer the day goes, the deafer I get.
Okay, I will project. Bonnie Bay Mountain Recreation Area is a 61-acre project. The major land asset is recreation lands, and this project is being presented to you by the town of North Berwick for a fee acquisition project. This would be a conservation of the highest summit of Bonnie Bay Mountain. And here with us today are Dwayne Moran, the town manager of North Berwick, and Tom Gilmore of the Great Works Regional Interest.
Well, thank you, folks. Thank you for your time and effort. Certainly a long day for you guys to going through all this stuff. Let me give you a little brief talk about our Bonnie Bay Mountain Conservation. Town of North Berwick is in southern Maine. We're experiencing very much lots of developmental pressures as it relates to all the lands within our area. This project is actually a project that started in 1999. We started with the town acquiring about 10 acres of land, which was actually the third peak. At that same time, the town partnered with Great Works Regional Land Trust to look at other lands that we could get. This is one of our primary conservation areas within the town that we've been seeking after. In 2000, we were able to obtain the second peak of the mountain, which actually protected about 89 acres of land on top of the mountain. Also in 1999, the town started what was called an open space impact fee fund. What we do is we actually collect $500 from every house that's built in town, every bedroom in that house. We divide that money between recreation and open space. For this project, the town has actually already set $100,000 aside, and that money is actually secured for this project. $80,000 will go towards land acquisition costs. $20,000 will go to stewardship and maintenance of the project as we move forward. This is part of a Maine Natural Area Program focus area. Includes a significant part of not only Bonnie Bay area, but actually back out through here. Significant wildlife and flora and fauna within the project area. Bonnie Bay Mountain is the only mountain in southern Maine that doesn't have a communications tower on it. Every other mountain in southern Maine has a communications tower, whether it be a cell tower or other type of communications tower. Bonnie Bay Mountain has none. It's the only mountain that's unblemished within southern Maine. It also has fantastic vistas. You go up to the top of the mountain, you have the Atlantic Ocean to your east. Actually, you can see as far as Portland. To the west, you can see the Presidential Range, specifically Mount Washington. To the south, you can see into New Hampshire. Tremendous amounts of vistas from the top of the mountain. We have a unique situation here. We purchased the first two peaks of the mountain. The top peak, which is the highest peak of the mountain, 860 feet, has now become available through private ownership. They've actually owned the property since 1955, but they're also seeking to bolster their retirement program for their own personal gain. So we've been working with them. Tom's been working with the Thompsons for about 7 years.
Well, not quite 7, but yeah.
Significant amount of time. Working on them because it's a piece of the puzzle that we want to have. So we'd like to have the whole mountain. There's still a few other parcels of land that we're also targeting to make it a completely unfragmented natural conservation area. Although the project will provide moderate economic benefit to the area, really the benefit is to our community, the community impact. The town, excuse me. It creates a large unfragmented area of the mountain, protects rare plant and animal habitats and natural features such as rock outcroppings, and also providing recreational opportunities to visitors and residents. Last year, Carrie Kish had an article in Portland Press Herald about unsung hikes. Bonnie Bay Mountain is the unsung hike in southern Maine. If you want to do a day hike, it's about an hour and a half. You can walk all the trails within the mountain, see magnificent vistas. Since that time, we've seen just a huge amount activity on Bonnie Big Mountain. My house is about 300 feet from the parking lot for Bonnie Beg, for the recreation area currently. I can tell you on most Saturdays and Sundays, we have cars lined up and down the road to see this magnificent natural feature. Want to turn it over to Tom so he can give you a few other facts and figures about our magnificent project.
Thanks, Dwayne. Again, I'm Tom Gilmore. I'm on the Board of Directors, Great Works Regional Land Trust. I've been on the board for 10, 12 years. And I'm the project manager for the Land Trust. Give you a quick update on the status of a couple of things. Actually, before, we did notice a couple of slight errors on boundary lines and the conserved lands on these maps. If you're interested in specifically what they are, I'll talk to that later, but I was thinking of the second map. We increased the land area by 5 acres to the 61 acres. The purchase and sale agreement, we're in discussions with the landowner on that. We have not signed it yet. I talked to the landowner last night and he's ready to meet with us in the next couple of weeks to get a signature on that. He was trying to get more advice from realtors as well as his own financial advisor, and he's ready to come and sign that P&S once we come up with a number. One reason we haven't signed it yet is we have also applied for funding under the Land and Water Conservation Fund program. That program prohibits the applicant from signing a P&S until the funding is approved. And we won't get funding approved on that until this summer. We've been preliminarily approved, but it goes up to national, and we should hear back from them in the next couple of months. We, working with Doug Beck, who was fantastic with us, we applied for a waiver from LWCF, and they gave us that waiver so that we can sign the P&S before approval of their money. When we met with the landowner after that, and this is in mid-March, 1 week before submitting the proposal to LMF, the landowner said, "Would you like the last 5 acres that I've been holding back for myself?" That 5 acres gave us an additional 300 feet of road frontage, allowed us to move the parking lot away from that small world begonia rare plant. And so we said yes, and in 7 days, we redid the budget, redid the maps, redid the text, redid what we were asking for, and got it to you on time. And I handed it to Sarah after I drove up here. Thank you for meeting me in the building when I couldn't find your office. As Dwayne said, there's no other 866-foot mountain for sale in southern Maine. The views are unbelievable. This landowner wants to sell it to us, but he's also very serious about funding his retirement. He had plans to sell off the 3 building lots, one every 5 years. Actually, 6-7 years ago, he did sell a 15-acre lot that was carved out of this piece, and that now has a house on it. So if we don't buy it, it will be developed. And I also want to commend North Berwick and Dwayne. You talk about support. We went in and asked for $80,000 and they gave us $100,000.
That'll have to be the last word since it ended on a positive note. So.
All right. And I will say thank you to Sarah, Laura, Jason, and Flora. This is the first time I've applied for a grant and done a project, and they've been lifesavers to me.
Great, thank you very much. Questions from the board? I actually have just a quick question. Did you say that it's a $500 for each bedroom?
For each bedroom. So what we did is that back in 1999, we developed basically an impact fee structure.
Yeah.
For each bedroom that's built within our community since 1999, we've collected $500. We split that 1/3, 2/3. So 1/3 goes towards open space and conservation, 2/3 goes towards recreation. We utilize those funds since we've had that open space project. We help fund the second peak purchase. We also help fund a couple other Great Works regional land projects, as well as the town. We actually funded, we just created what was called the Maple Street forest area, which is about 72 acres of land that we created that butts the Connecticut River trust that the Great Works Land Trust has, creating about 7 miles worth of trails within our area. Our concern is that they're not making enough land. Northborough, the developmental pressures are just tremendous being in the middle of Southern Maine. So we decided to put our money where our mouth is, and we actually collect the money and utilize it towards open space projects.
Great, thank you. Last I knew, they did stop making land, so if the sea level keeps rising, we're going the other direction, right? I want to thank the board for indulging me for asking a question that's not project related. So I broke my own rule there. I think I've got Barbara first, or no.
Raise my hand.
You didn't? I thought you would.
I was going to ask that, but I knew I wouldn't be allowed. I think it's a remarkable program that you have, and I'm just wondering how we replicate that in the rest of the towns and cities.
Open the door. Then I'm not going to talk to any board members that are here present. Mac, you've got your hand up.
I wanted some clarification on the endangered species values. I saw your map for the small world Pagonia. I'm assuming that marks the location of 6 individuals, not 6 populations, given the scale. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was one grouping of about 6 individuals.
Okay. And the other clarification, your application had quite a lot of the information from the beginning with habitat focal area, which talks at length about Blandings, turtles, and red maple fens, but neither of those are actually, they're in the area, but not actually on this property. Is that correct?
Correct. They're part of the MNAP area of the Bonnie Bag Mountain MNAP area. Those are in the wetlands to the north of the mountain.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. That's what I assumed, but I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mac. Barbara?
Is there an existing trail then to the summit of Bonnie
So
the
we have-
highest peak?
Yeah, so we have a trail system that connects the second and third peak together. It also goes up and over the top of the mountain from Fox Farm Hill Road to Bonnie Bag Hill Road. There's no existing trails that are available for public use to the top of the mountain. There are some, there's some walkways there, but our goal would be to create additional trail structures within the area, interconnecting all our trails for recreational opportunities.
It's widely used by the people that live, the abutters that live there. Nobody's put up no trespassing signs, but to your question, in the project area, there are no existing trails.
Paul?
My sense is that the numbers are kind of ambiguous. You're still negotiating the P&S agreement with the landowner. Where's that headed?
Well, we've let him
I have
know.
a number here, but I'm not feeling real comfortable that what the number is.
The way we came up with that number, for the LWCF grant, we had to have an appraisal. That appraisal was done in April of last year, so it's about 14 months old. If selected as a finalist, we will have an appraisal done this summer to get a up-to-date appraisal value number. The way we came up with our number in the budget for LMF is we basically added 15% to last year's to account for the pandemic-induced increase in land prices. We've let the landowner know that LMF policy is only to get involved with a sale where the sale does not exceed the appraised value. And he acknowledged hearing that. And that's where we're gonna sit down and talk once, once there's an appraisal.
So these numbers here are a reflection of the appraisal from last year plus 15%.
Right, it was our best guess, it was a swag. Scientific model, yeah.
Okay. Mac, your hand's back up.
Sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none. Thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're gonna keep going down the list to the Keyser corridor, and that's tab number 9.
Corridor lands, Patterson Hill. This is 357 acres, fee acquisition by Greater Level Land Trust. The major land asset is areas of scenic interest, and there are expansive mountain views from one of the parcels at the top of Patterson Hill. Here with us is Erica Rowland. I realize I haven't heard of good. Yeah. Thank you, from Greater Level Land Trust.
Greater Level Land Trust, and thank you all for allowing me to share this project with you. So this project is actually the largest land project that the organization has undertaken, the Keyser Corridor lands in total. The 2 pieces that are subject to the land for Maine futures are 2 of 3 parcels that are part of this larger project. And that's definitely the focus here for today. But I do want to emphasize that in total, we have another 955 acre parcel in total. This project has the potential to protect over 1,300 acres of land in the northern end of the Keyser River Valley. And that's in addition to the already 378 acres of easement land we have. And then the land trust owns another 294 at the headwaters of the Keyser River. So really expanding our protection in what is a focus area for the organization. So it looks here like this. So this is a 334 acre parcel and then a 23 acre parcel. It looks like the 23 acre parcel is an island. I know you have maps in your in the application, but the 955 acres essentially wraps around the end, encompasses the 23 acres, encompasses the entire shoreline of Dan Charles Pond, a mile and a half on the Keyser River, and then reconnects with these easement lands on that side. So just emphasizing the nature of this landscape. The 334 acre property extends from the southern slope of Patterson Hill down to the Keyser River, where there are some really unusual or at least interesting river terraces that have been formed. It's largely forested, largely will be an addition to habitat connectivity between the 955 acres and the easement properties. There is some potential deer wintering habitat on this property in terms of some of the ecological features, as well as significant vernal pools that we identified in some surveys during the summer. The other part of this particular parcel, while it has some cultural features, again, largely habitat, there is a section of what is a very extensive ATV and snowmobile trail network that this is the northeastern part of Lovell. It extends into Sweden to the east and Waterford to the north. And there's a little piece of that goes through the middle of the 334 acre property. The 23 acre piece is small, but it captures the summit of Patterson Hill. And from that summit, there's essentially a 270-degree view that captures the White Mountains and then wraps around to the south and captures some of the other more southerly mountains in western Maine. And then even more predominant in the foreground of the view is Sabattis Mountain, which is a property owned by the state of Maine. So it has a pretty spectacular view. And it's this piece that's actually a recreational feature of the larger project, in that both the snowmobile and ATV trails access the summit. It's a very popular site. It's actually very well maintained by the respective clubs that manage the trail network in this area. And one of the things the Land Trust hopes to do, although there's plenty of walking access up to the summit across the existing trails, is to create a pedestrian route up there, just to kind of cut down a little bit on potential user conflicts. Regional perspective, because sometimes I like to think big. This property is part of a connected and resilient landscape, as identified. It's highly resilient landscape. It's all of the parcels that are part of this project fall within the highly resilient north to south, in which this is part of, that have the potential to be a north-south corridor, and this the anchor perhaps of it, in this landscape. The GLLT is working with our neighboring land trusts to actually do some prioritization on conservation where our service areas intersect, and this kind of falls in that zone towards the end of building out connectivity from north to south, which extends from the state of Maine's White Mountain National Forest focus area down to the Upper Saco River focus area. So I really don't have much else to say at this point about this, other than that we're very excited about this opportunity. I was going to say that, you know, large chunks of land like this are becoming increasingly rare in southern Maine, but I guess having heard from some of the other folks who actually live in very southern Maine, I'll you know, say that in southwestern Maine, these are becoming increasingly rare. And the Land Trust is well on its way, both in the fundraising for these two pieces, but also the 955 acres, well on its way through the due diligence stages. We have purchase and sale agreements where title is underway at various stages. And then we're also having the entire area surveyed, which is already underway with the 955 acres and then this 334 acre piece. So just in closing, it's a very exciting opportunity for us. And again, the first opportunity for the Land Trust to conserve such a big area. Not to say that we don't have experience managing large land holdings. We also have an 800 acre parcel that the Land Trust has owned for since the 1990s with like 7 miles of trail. So with that, I'll take any questions that the board might have.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Robert.
While you have that up, I was just trying to figure out, I see the little parcel at the north or at the top. And then this seems to be divided into 3 parcels here, but these, it's because of the road.
It's because of the road. The town owns the road here. This is the old Waterford Road. The town actually owns this road too.
They own that road. And why is it divided going down this other? Is that a road too?
So that's an old road. That one I think that's a discontinued town road because there's absolutely no maintenance. This one right here?
No, I'm looking down at the bottom. You see where there's a double line?
This one?
No, that, now move over.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
That is not a road. I'm not sure that might be just a relic of the town tax maps.
Okay, but it's a contiguous
It is a contiguous
piece
parcel.
there. There's nothing.
Yeah. These are 2 separate parcels that are part of the same ownership.
Yes, okay, so only the road and the other one is contiguous. It's not divided.
Correct, yes.
Any other questions? Barbara?
So in your proposal, you talked about targeted timber stand improvements. And so I just wondered about the condition of the forest down there, and particularly in light of woolly adelgid and brown-tailed moths and beech disease.
We just heard of brown-tailed moth in our area. Somebody just called the office yesterday. We hadn't had any experience with it yet, but woolly adelgid is not in the area. The thing that we did pick up because we were managing a trap on the Sabatis Mountains is emerald ash borer. So there are going to be challenges in coming forward because like all of the Kezar River is lined with hemlock. So if the adelgid does come up, we're going to be dealing with that. And then also probably more sooner rather than later, the emerald ash borer. You know, the intention is not for all of these lands, and this is all in an area of Lovell that has a history of forest management. So these lands are all in different stages of cutting. This piece was part of the Chadbourne Tree Farm. I don't know if anybody's aware with the holdings further to the north. So it's been fairly well managed and is fairly well timbered. My guess is we won't do much, you know, if anything, anytime soon. Some of these other areas have been more heavily cut. And the idea is more towards timber stand improvement, towards increasing species diversity, looking at, you know, favoring species that are better adapted to climate change, thinking about ways to maybe increase carbon sequestration and storage, you know, more towards those aims rather than anything financial. And I think it'll be a few years before we get our act together. I mean, 1,300 acres is just in terms of developing a comprehensive management plan that includes recreation, timber management is a huge undertaking.
Thank you. And see no other questions. I think we're good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We are going to move right along to the Muddy River Forest. Should be tab 10.
Muddy River Forest is four separate, actually, working forest conservation easements that would be held by the Luneco Land Trust.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I feel like I need to yell. That's what it comes down to. So, four separate working forest conservation easements held by the Luneco Land Trust, totaling 1,357 acres. Major land asset is vital ecological functions and values. And taken together, this project would protect a fairly large amount of undeveloped acreage in the Sebago Lake watershed.
Great, thank you, everyone. My name is Matt Marcotte. I'm the Executive Director at Luneco Land Trust. I heard through the grapevine, you've done your homework, so I'll keep this brief and then give you plenty of times to ask questions. So this is a 1,357 acre project. The structure is an easement, 4 separate easements. We're really negotiating with 2 separate ownership cohorts here, one of which is a family-owned logging contractor based in Naples, who actually awarded the professional logging contractor award in Maine back in 2018. We do have 1 easement under contract. The other 3 are being negotiated right now. However, the easement terms have been agreed on in principle. And our request to LMF is for $700,000 with anticipated match of a little over $1.8 million. And with respect to funding, approximately 50% of the easement values is eligible for funding through, and this is a mouthful, the Sebago Clean Waters Regional Conservation Partnership Alternative Funding Arrangement.
Say that real quick.
The Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is an award given to the Sebago Clean Waters Partnership, of which the Luneco is a founding member, specifically for voluntary forest land conservation in the Sebago Lake watershed. And additional funding is highly likely from Portland Water District as well, because of the demonstrable impact on water quality in Sebago Lake, which is the public drinking supply for 1 in 6 Mainers. Properties are entirely undeveloped forest land, falls within 7 state identified undeveloped forest blocks, spans from the Otter Pond State Wildlife Action Plan focus area in the north to Sebago Lake in the south. Contains 1,700 feet of shoreline on Otter Pond itself, an additional 2,500 feet of frontage on Sebago Lake, which suffers from a legacy of a lack of public access. There's additional 7 acres of deer wintering habitat, 82 acres of wetlands, 14 acres of inland waterfowl wading bird habitat, approximately 1.8 miles of frontage on 3 additional streams, 6,700 feet of that is identified as wild brook trout habitat. The southern portion of the project parcels provide connectivity to a Luneco Land Trust held easement, state-owned conserved land at Cold Green Pond, an LELT preserve. If you look at the map, you can tell we've been busy in this area for the last 30 years. And it's also noteworthy that we've received unanimous support from all 3 municipalities where this project spans. So all 3 select boards in Bridgeton, Naples, and Sebago have unanimously supported this project with letters of support, in addition to a letter of support from the Portland Water District. There's a long time legacy of public access on these properties, mostly for traditional uses, primarily hunting and fishing, snowmobiling, with 1 club-sponsored snowmobile trail that we're aware of at this time. And with respect to climate resiliency, the majority of the project areas were identified by the Nature Conservancy's Resilient Lands data set as average high to high average climate flow for species adapting to climate change. So we think this is a really good project. We think it really fits the intent of this funding program. It's certainly a significant fundraising effort, but we feel really good about the feasibility of that given the funding programs that are available, especially in this region. So happy to answer any questions at this time.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
In that southern portion, the frontage, is that currently undeveloped?
Yeah, it's all undeveloped. The entire acreage is undeveloped, correct. And it's our intention to increase access, especially to that frontage on Sebago Lake with a pedestrian trail. And that's already agreed on for the easements written into the purchase and sale agreement, in fact.
But not a boat landing.
It's not really amenable to like a boat launch. There actually is a boat launch town-owned land not far from there. But certainly, hand carry watercraft, that type of thing could come up from the lake and access the property in that way.
Set, Jim?
Yes, thank you.
So Matt, this is for 4 different easements, is that correct?
That's correct. So it's essentially 2 different ownership cohorts that we're dealing with here. One landowner in the larger southern parcel, and the remaining really makes up the entire ownership of this one family ownership. They have 3 separate LLCs that own this. So we're negotiating for 3 separate easements to match up with those LLCs.
And so all of those parcels outlined in yellow will have an easement if you move.
That is the intent.
Yes. Way up in the top, there's a little tiny one.
Yeah, that one's really interesting. So that's in the town of Bridgeton. It's within the Otter Pond State Wildlife Action Plan focus area. Has frontage on Otter Pond, really lovely pond, right on the 302 corridor as well. So zoned for commercial, I think, in the town of Bridgeton. So certainly there's some significant development pressure along that commercial corridor.
Other questions, and just, actually, Jim, just one from me, just for clarity. So you said 3 of the easements are under negotiation right now and 1 is under contract?
Correct. We have 1 under contract. The other 3 we're currently negotiating for. And really the reason for the delay there is just trying to understand what the funding picture is going to be. Our intention, well, it's the landowner's desire to receive, the maximum level of compensation for this. And, that's our intention is to be able to give them that. But we want to understand if we're going to be a finalist for this program specifically. And I think there is an outside potential to negotiate for a bargain sale, but that's certainly not where the landowners are negotiating from at this point.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Actually, that brings up a question, a la bargain sale, but are these, with the majority of these folks, is this going to be effectively a working forest easement? I mean,
effectively. So, fall, the working forest terms in the easement would satisfy the minimum requirements of the LMF program and likely go a little beyond that as well. Just in terms of our own sort of templates for managing working forest easements. But yeah, these forests have been managed for decades by this family. They've done a really good job. They're managing it with a long-term horizon. They grow white pine excellently. And so this, it just represents a really important, there's a really important economic component to this. So.
Mac, I see your hand.
Yes, I also was curious about the details of the working forest easement. Meeting minimum requirements doesn't necessarily inspire much, but so I'm wondering, is there any discussion of what is the current standing basal area or what the goal might be or anything of that level of detail?
No, we're not foresters, so we haven't done that type of due diligence. I can tell you anecdotally that these lands are stocked better than similar or comparison land in southern Maine. Again, this is a long-term ownership. This family's intention through conservation is to continue to maintain these as working forests long into the future as a legacy for their family. So, with that long-term ownership horizon, I think comes a much greater desire to increase or outperform levels of stocking as compared to other forests in the region.
That's reassuring as long as this family with their current goals continues to own the land, but we don't know what's coming in the future.
Yeah, and our easements would require a management plan to be updated every 10 years. That management plan would need to prioritize things like wildlife habitat protection, obviously wetland and water quality. We have a lot of experience managing easements like that. We find that whenever we have a conservation easement on working forest lands, that the outcomes are better than comparable private lands without any type of easement on them. And again, these landowners in particular are excellent examples of stewards of their lands. Again, they won the Professional Logging Contractors of the Year award in 2018. I think coincidentally, they were actually the last logging contractors to manage the southern parcel. So they're committed to practicing good forestry in this neck of the woods.
Thank you.
Bob?
Are the lands certified?
That's a good question. I believe that all of the lands that are currently owned by the logging contractor business are enrolled in the American Tree Farm program.
Barbara?
Matt, the terms of the easement would allow you to develop a non-motorized trail in the lower parcel to Lake Sebago, is that correct?
Exactly.
And
Yep.
in terms of all the rest of those parcels, may I assume that there aren't trails right now and that there would be no reason for trails?
Yeah, the traditional use again has been for hunting, fishing, limited snowmobile use. And our management vision would be to keep it that way. In the lake region, there are many opportunities for pedestrian access on 6,500 acres of land that we own and manage, for instance. I think one of the areas that we're seeing most threatened right now is public access on private land for things like hunting, fishing, traditional uses, trapping on a limited basis. It would be our primary goal with respect to public access, in addition to the landowner's primary goal, to maintain that legacy of traditional use, specifically on those properties. In the southern parcel, we really would like to be able to provide access to the Sebago Lake.
Kim?
Barbara, if it's okay with you as the stewardship goddess, I would like to ask a stewardship question. Is that in place in terms of level of funding from them for your stewardship activity, or?
I'm sorry, funding from
the owners of?
The owners are not going to be contributing to any stewardship fund.
Really?
So that would be raised as a part of the overall project budget, which is how we typically our land trust typically structures our projects. Yeah. We just went through Land Trust Alliance reaccreditation, and we proud to say are somewhere like 1,500% over the recommended stewardship reserve guidelines for our easement properties. So we've been very strategic and also very intentional about raising stewardship funds.
Inherent in your ongoing practices, or is that unusual for this one?
No, that is inherent in our ongoing practices. Yeah, we have an adopted policy for that. We pay taxes on all of our fee lands through those reserve funds, et cetera.
Are the members of I'm going to call it the Sebago Lake Protection Group, are they contributing to help you make this purchase?
Talk about Sebago Clean Waters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it's a coalition of which we're a partner.
That long name.
Yeah.
Just Sebago.
And so there is some potential funding through that program, but the majority of funding is coming through that long acronymed funding program that is administered. Portland Water District is actually the lead partner on that. We are a secondary partner. And again, up to 50% of the value of the easements would be eligible for reimbursement through the United States government through that program.
Okay, Mac, your hand is still up.
Sorry again.
Sorry again. That's all right. That's all right. Just want to make sure it didn't go back up. Okay. I think we're good on questions. Good on questions, Bob? All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we're going to move right along to the next project, Porter Hill.
Porter Hills is 5 parcels, 3 of which would be acquired with LMF funding, 2 of which would be donated as match. All held in fee by the Francis Small Heritage Trust. Total acreage just under 600. Major land asset is vital ecological functions and values. There's also an existing network of trails accessing mountain summits that I'm told are stunning. So take it away.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Chapin, and I was born and raised in Porter, Maine. I'm a 9-year member of the Francis Small Heritage Trust Board of Directors, where I have served as secretary all 9 years. I grew up in the Porter Hills, a child of parents who care deeply for the natural beauty of these hills and invested in purchasing, conserving, and sustainably managing their woodlands and caring deeply for the wildlife of the area. 2 of the properties they had are offered by our family as match for this very important opportunity to conserve a significant area of the Porter Hills. Our Francis Small Heritage Trust is a private, nonprofit conservation land trust founded in 1990. We obtain land and easements to conserve important resources for public access and traditional uses. The trust currently owns a total of 1,648 acres and holds easements on an additional 524 acres, lands owned and held primarily in northern York County, with approximately 1,449 acres on the Sawyer Mountain Highlands, located in the largest unfragmented block of undeveloped forested area of York and Cumberland counties. This is especially significant since the Highlands are only 22 miles from Portland, Maine's largest urban area. Recently, our land trust has focused its efforts on the undeveloped and ecologically significant lands in the Porter Hills, a 6,000 acre focus area of statewide ecological significance. 2 years ago, we became aware of properties in those mostly wild and undeveloped hills that were for sale, excuse me, in a real estate market that was becoming very hot with COVID-19 related pressure. Our small trust decided that the Porter Hills should be our top conservation priority and launched the Porter Hills Initiative. Working with the Southern Maine Conservation Collaborative, we retained the services of Jerry Bly to help us navigate the world of conservation acquisitions and funding. Working with Jerry, our trust committee identified potential conservation opportunities and connected with Porter Hills landowners. From that work emerged the proposal for the first phase of the Porter Hills Initiative. In addition, I'm pleased to report that we recently closed on the purchase of 133 acre Porter Hay property, an important part of the Porter Hills utilizing MNRCP funding. We are also engaged in discussions with several additional Porter Hills landowners that we expect will lead to future acquisition opportunities. As we have reached out to the local community, it is clear that our message of conservation resonates positively, both with local Porter Hills residents and the seasonal Colquitt Pond community. We have also connected to local logging companies, which are Porter's largest employers, and have assured them that we will manage our lands for both sustainable harvesting of wood while caring for the woodlands to sequester and store carbon. We have reached out to both our local ATV and snowmobile clubs to assure them that we are interested in working collaboratively with them to maintain access to trails and wood roads in this area. Finally, this effort to conserve ecologically precious yet threatened land in the Porter Hills is a critical opportunity to retain some of the grandeur of our local environment, provide habitat for threatened wildlife while sharing it with all who come to visit and partake of our special corner of southwestern Maine. Dan Hester will now tell you more about the specific project.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm Dan Hester. I'm a longtime resident of the town of Hiram. I'm Vice President of the Francis Small Heritage Trust. I'm also a Hiram's member on the Sauk River Corridor Commission, and I serve with other local conservation groups. Kathy explained the background of our land trust, her family's roots in the area, and why the Porter Hills are currently the focus of our conservation efforts. One of the reasons that we're working on this project, as Kathy has briefly explained, is that her family is willing to make donations that are most of the matching funds that are making this project possible. And we sincerely thank her and her family for that. But the other important feature here is that this is in the middle of a main natural areas focus, Porter Hills focus area. That area and surrounding lands have exceptional opportunities for conservation, habitat preservation, public recreation, and economic stability. Quoting directly from the focus area report, that the specific conservation opportunities are to preserve natural communities and the integrity of the natural systems in which they occur, limit timber harvesting near significant features and restrict harvesting around rare plant populations, limit recreational vehicles in sensitive areas, and work with willing landowners to protect the remaining significant features. We're working on all of that. At the start of this work, our land already had a toehold here. We already own the 25-acre Ball Ledge Preserve, which has a foot trail that we maintain that leads to the stunning views from that summit. Just 2 months ago, as Kathy mentioned, we acquired the 133-acre Porter Heath Preserve. This parcel has half of the great 100-acre Great Porter Heath. It is not shown on this map, but that's the tip of the heath pointing down, and it's up in that area. The only other conserved lands in this area are the 40-acre Norm Nelson Forest that's owned by Maine woodland owners, also not shown on this map, which is in this area right here. The other areas that are under conservation are several parcels that have conservation easements held by the Forest Society of Maine, which we are partnering with in this project. 5 parcels are proposed for acquisition. Foxbrook is 100 acres with the watershed of that name and abutting to the Maine woodland owner's land. Foxbrook drains to the Ossipee River, that's in this area. Heron's Haven and Blueberry Hill parcel, that's 80 acres contiguous with Foxbrook. It has a 10-acre beaver pond at the south and an open area, which is where it gets its Blueberry Hill name, with expansive views to the north. Devil's Den is the 50-acre capstone of the project. This stunning view has been visited for centuries and continues to be a popular destination. We've been in discussion with local ATV and snowmobile clubs to develop plans for acceptable long-term use. Separate from the LMF project, we're also acquiring a cabin in that area, which will be in use for environmental education and stewardship projects. The last 2 parcels are being donated to advance our goals. Ball Ledge Summit is 200 acres and Bickford Slopes is 170 acres. These all have important features, but I'm running out of time. Acquiring these lands and having a management plan with anticipated improvements will accomplish our phase 1 project here. Meanwhile, we've already identified other parcels that may become available, and that may develop into the phase 2 project for some time in the near future. Our board, our donors, and our volunteers all have great enthusiasm for this project, and thank you.
Great timing. And before I go to the board, it's not often that we actually have a presenter that comes that has actually skin in the game and is making these projects possible. So I want to thank you for that personal contribution.
Pleasure.
With that, is there any questions from the board? Barbara.
Dan, thank you. So the parcel to the far right here, it's sort of divided into 2 parcels?
No, this is one of them. This is the one that's called Heron's Haven and Blueberry Hill. This is the Foxbrook.
And so
no, that's just a boundary line.
That's just a
boundary feature of the way these were.
You're treating that as
right. They are
one
contiguous.
parcel and then the Devils.
And as a matter of fact, the Norm Nelson Forest is contiguous with this one, the Foxbrook, and this is all together. Then there's a gap, and then there's a gap.
Okay.
And yes, notice that there weren't very many green spots in the Porter Hills, as you saw the map to begin with. And that's why we're concentrating our efforts there.
And what is the extent of motorized use of these?
Yes, well, on the actual lands that we're aiming to conserve, very little motorized use, but the problem is, and you can see these on the map. There are a series of networks of old road easements. They are still public ways, but they're unmaintained. And they're heavily used by ATVs, snowmobiles in the winter, and they are also paths. Most of those are on boundaries between the parcels. We have no intention of inhibiting the established use, like with the ATVs and snowmobiles, but we have no intention of having extended use going into any of these other parcels. As a matter of fact, one of them, this is where Devil's Den is located, which is the most spectacular overlook. It's the cover picture in the document you were given. And we do have an ATV trail that runs basically through this area that was established some number of years ago. And we would allow that to continue because of its established use, but we would control it. The most important thing we have to do with that is currently they drive ATVs right to the ledges that drop off over the viewpoint. And we would intend to fence an area before that that stops the mechanical use and limit it to foot travel.
Yep. Yeah, been a lot of activity in the last few years regarding status of abandoned or discontinued roads. Has the town of Porter or anyone else pursued that in regards to the?
With regard to closing use of the roads?
Or determining whether or not you actually could.
Right, we've been working from a report that the town of Porter did in the, well, 1990, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Listing, they identified a whole series of the roads to determine whether they had been abandoned for maintenance, which they have been, and are they still public ways? And they listed the ones that were public ways, and we're working from that.
You're comfortable that their analysis was appropriate?
I guess the best I could say is that we are comfortable, but not entirely certain. And yes,
Former member of the abandoned public roads study group, I can say that that's an excellent answer.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation. So for the board, we have 3 presentations left. We need to do a quick turnaround for us. And if the board is willing, I'd like to just stay in our seats and move it right into that. Who's up first? Or Brian. Ready? So I'm sorry, I'm looking the wrong way. I thought they said they were doing it. Flora, you ready?
It's me. And
All right.
how's
let's
this?
go.
Nice and loud. Okay.
Fort O'Brien.
Fort O'Brien expansion project is a 6-acre proposal put forward by the Bureau of Parks and Lands. It's in Machiasport, and this is a project of statewide significance because the existing Fort O'Brien historic site sees between 6,000 and 7,000 people a year. So Liz.
Good afternoon again, everybody. And as I said, I saved my simple project for later in the day. So wanted to start with just a little bit of background about the Fort O'Brien State Historic Site, since that's kind of our main driver for looking at this additional parcel. So the fort was built in 1775 and is one of just a few main forts that were active during 3 wars: the American Revolution,
War of 1812, and then also the Civil War. The fort's layout was altered several times over the 90 years it was active, but its important role in protecting the Machias River and its towns remained unchanged. In 1923, the federal government deeded the site over to the state of Maine, and it was made a state historic site in 1966 and has been maintained by the Bureau of Parks and Lands ever since. Today, the site continues to provide visitors with some insights into the battles of the area and also offers a picture-perfect view of the iconic rocky Maine coast. Park staff estimate that the historic site sees approximately 6,000 to 7,000 visitors each year. Current activities at the site, which is fairly small there, so probably also about 6 acres, include sightseeing and picnicking. And while the site does have water frontage, the steep terrain makes it really difficult to get people down to the shore. So just over a year ago, the property is owned by the town. The adjacent property that we're talking about today is owned by the town of Machiasport. Just over a year ago, the town contacted the Bureau to let us know that they were trying to sell the property. And so the Bureau saw this as an opportunity to protect the scenic values of the prominent point and to also enhance the visitor experience at the state historic site. So some of the potential improvements we're considering include a walking trail, a path to the beach, and additional picnic sites. As you can see in the map, the parcel is also directly adjacent to the Fort O'Brien Elementary School, and the teachers there have expressed interest in using the additional land as an outdoor classroom. Expansion of the state historic site supports several significant plans. One of those is the town's comprehensive plan, which seeks to protect critical natural resources and scenic vistas, to provide a wide range of outdoor recreational opportunities, including access to the public waters. Another significant plan that supports the project would be Maine's statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. That prioritizes making it easier for Mainers to fit outdoor recreation into their busy lives. It encourages opportunities to promote outdoor recreation at schools, prioritizes projects that involve upgrades to existing sites, and also access to coastal recreation opportunities. The project also contributes to some regional economic goals. We received a notice recently that, well, it's within the area that's being proposed to become the Down East Maine National Heritage Area. And I think we received a notice recently that that effort is moving ahead for review by Congress. And so structures and sites on National Historic Register locations like this are really critical supporting assets to those economic heritage plans. And so expansion of the site here really boosts the capacity of this property to support that regional economic effort. And I know 6 acres sounds small, but when you think about 6,000 to 7,000 people a year, it's significant in terms of that use and the potential economic impact as well. Overall, we feel that this project really helps meet a growing need for close to home recreation opportunities. It will easily connect more people with the water, and being within walking distance of Machiasport Village and the school means that the community can connect to this parcel without additional transportation. So they're at the town office, they're at the school, they're in town, they're already here and can find a way to get to the water. The Bureau sees this as one of many investments that we're making in existing park facilities. We hope to attract new users and expand open space opportunities to meet changing needs of residents and visitors. So thank you for your consideration, and I'll answer any questions.
Thanks for those questions.
Yeah, how about the appraisal side here? I noticed it doesn't appear to be underway or.
We're just about to finalize a contract to do that. It's been really hard to track somebody down for this.
In terms of the appraisal, I just wondered what the highest and best use of this would be. Does it have direct access to the major road there?
It doesn't. I think there's, we would let the appraiser know that and have all the kind of appropriate deed information. But that's kind of how we came to this project, was the town called us to see if we would provide access across our land for them to sell it. So they're not shy about kind of, finding a way to do that.
So they, through the school property, they would have provided.
Yeah, or you could do it through, I guess, abutting landowners. I think it's unlikely, but there's no legal access right now, as far as we can tell.
Was with the two pieces about, there's a little wedge there. Is that just mapping? Yeah, yeah, okay, so I thought. Any other questions? Oh, we have a hand. Matt.
Yes, you mentioned access down to the beach. Would that involve a staircase? And any idea how much that would cost?
I don't have an estimate, but yes, it would be a path and probably some stairs as well. Right now there's, you can see on the map here, there's a launch. It's informal, so not secured by the town in any way, but it's used by swimmers and fishermen to get out to the water and
me,
others in the community as well. And so it's an easy existing way, but our hope would be to have a trail kind of along the upland, but also provide a way down to the water through this land.
Yeah, it would be quite a challenge given the height and instability of the shore.
Yes, I climbed up it, so I think there are options. We did kind of do a very basic assessment of the feasibility of that, and we feel like the parcel here offers us greater opportunities than the existing Port O'Brien parcel. And
Thank you.
apparently the school is using one parcel or the other to get down there already, but those kids are closer to the ground, so they have not as far to fall.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving right along, next is Great Pond Mountain, which is tab 6 in your workbook.
Yes, so Great Pond Mountain is two parcels totaling 501 acres. We acquired a fee by the Great Pond Mountain Conservation Trust. Major land asset is recreation lands, and these would build on the 4,200 acre Great Pond Mountain Wildlands, which Land for Maine's Future funded back in 2007. Take it away, Landon.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Thanks for all your work. So when we acquired the what we call the wildlands initially, it was 4,200 acres. In the intervening years, we've added another 400 acres in the.
Can you speak up just a little?
We've added about 300 or 400 acres in little bits and pieces since then. So it was at 4,500 acres. And then with these two parcels, it'll put us up to about 5,000. The trust also owns two other very small fee properties. Well, you won't be able to see them. And we also own two conservation easements on these islands, in Phillips Lake and a couple other pieces. But our overwhelming responsibility and focus of most of our work is in the wildlands. They're currently managed and have been managed for three things: wildlife habitat, forestry, and recreation. We've set aside about 25% of them as where the priority is habitat protection. We've taken roads out, taken out some trails, and trying to leave that as much a eco reserve area as possible. The forestry, when we bought the parcel, it had been owned by a logger for some time, and the paper mill in Bucksport was up and running, and so virtually all the wood on the property went to the mill in chips or pulp. So we have a forester, and we work with the NRCS. The NRCS spends about $100,000 a year on our forestry projects. Right now, we're growing a lot of excellent diseased beech, but we're making some headway towards diversifying the species, I guess. We just last week I was here accepting the
Hancock County Outstanding Forester of the Year Award for the trust, the main trail system award. The third management goal is recreation. It's got, the trust has about 20 miles of roads. It maintains gravel roads, about 20 miles of trails. We host everything from mountain bikes to snowmobiles. We've got pretty long and growing purpose-built mountain biking trail. And ITS 107 currently goes through the property, and there's actually pieces of it on both these parcels in this proposal. As you can see, you can't see. Route 1, our southern trailhead is right on Route 1. So there's 9,000 or 10,000 cars a day going by that trailhead, which we have mixed feelings about. But it's we think we entertain about 20,000 people a year. And if we develop that south trailhead anymore, I think we'd get even a lot more than that. So the expansion is 2 parcels, the Mercer parcel, the northernmost one here, and it's 180 acres. We've been negotiating with the owner for about 10 years, and we're finally getting close. We just finished the survey on it yesterday, and we've got a signed purchase and sale agreement. It's got 2 low elevation balds. There's 5 low elevation balds in the rest of the wildlands, or hills, I would call them, around 1,000 feet with bald summits. So there's views from all of them. There's smooth sandwart on both of them, although so it's only recognized on one. There's a blueberry field, about a 5-acre blueberry field, and it's like I said, it has part of the ITS 107. The second larger parcel, this parcel, this outline actually shows about 360 acres. We carved off a 30-acre parcel in here, which is part of the proposal. Our board wanted a little bit of runway in case we didn't come up with other funding mechanisms. So that was the thought, that we could sell that off if we needed to pay for the rest. We most likely won't do that. So anyway, the proposal is for 318 acres. It also excludes this little cutout here, which is the 5-acre parcel. It has a house on it. So since we bought it, we sold the house. We used most of the proceeds of the house to pay down a loan we have on it. And we still owe, I forget it's in the proposal, 100 and some thousand on the loan. It's a very different property than the rest of the wildlands. It wasn't owned by a logger. It's been in the same ownership for 20 years, and before that for 40 years. Was probably 30 years ago. It was lightly harvested. So it's a much more mature forest, a lot more biodiversity. There's 2 major wetlands on it. And they're both of them at various times have beavers in them, but we just discovered a couple of vernal pools, very large vernal pools up in here. They're probably of statewide significance. So we have more homework to do on that. It's a 1.5 miles of waterfront. It was the appraiser thought the highest and best use was for housing, waterfront house development. So we acquired it a little more than a year ago, and we've done a natural resource inventory on it. We've had it surveyed. And are starting to build a trail that goes from this is Mast Hill Road here, that goes from Mast Hill Road above this wetland and weaves its way through down the shore. And then as well, we plan on putting in a campsite on the water and a picnic site, another picnic site. Both of those would be water accessed. I guess I answer questions.
Questions from the board? Yes, name.
Your last name, Landon?
Fake, F-A-K-E.
Thank you.
Judy.
Could you just talk about the plans to manage for the blueberries and sort of how you plan to manage for some of the rare species on the property?
Sure. One of the other parcels we own, we have a working blueberry field on that we lease to a local grower. And our intention is to do the same. It's been organic for the last 4 years, I think. And so we would hope to continue that.
Tim, are you involved in any of the carbon credit activity or plan to on this or on the other?
No, I mean, we're not currently, but we're kind of sticking our toe in the water a little bit. Even 5,000 acres seems like the bottom limit for size.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're gonna bring this baby home with Wallamatoga.
All of it's here. All right. 330.
Saving the best for last.
Exactly.
Hold your horses now. 336 acres, fee acquisition by Blue Hill Heritage Trust, major land asset recreational lands. Project highlights, I was going to pick the second highest peak on the Blue Hill Peninsula. Hans, it's all yours.
All right. I am well aware that I'm the only thing standing between you and going home, so I'm going to be pithy. I'm Hans Carlson. I'm the executive director of Blue Hill Heritage Trust. BHHT has been in business for 37 years, and this project and the Eggemogan Reach Water Access Project that you folks are funding as well are going to put us over 12,000 acres of conservation on the Blue Hill Peninsula. And this is conservation for ecological conservation. It's conservation for recreational activity. We have 30 plus miles of hiking trail. It's also conservation for working lands. So we have a lot of farmland easements. We have a couple of working forests as well. This project fits well within that conservation footprint. The conservation land you can see to the east of this project is all farmland easements. The parcel directly to the north is also part of Wallamatogus Mountain. It's fee land of ours, which is a raptor preserve and protects a large portion of the Great Heath, which is one of the biggest wetland complexes on the peninsula. The project and Wallamatogus Mountain are within an identified focus area for Blue Hill Heritage Trust, an ecological focus area. And of course, the Bagaduce watershed as a whole is one of Maine Coast Heritage Trust's whole places. The Bagaduce watershed is also, as of this spring, with the alewives coming back to Parker Pond and Frost Pond, the first watershed in the state of Maine wholly restored for fish passage. So there's a lot of good conservation work going on in this area, and this project I think is a really important addition to that. I say all that because the major land asset here in the proposal is for recreation, but there's a bigger picture too, and this parcel checks a lot of boxes for that. This first came to us as a potential project when a couple of the family owners came to us in 2018 and asked if we would be interested in purchasing the land for for conservation. And we did an appraisal at that point, and we came up with a project budget, and we started doing our funding analysis, and we really couldn't see a clear path forward to getting this done in 2018. And so we didn't say no, but we really put it on the back burner. In 2021, things changed, in part because of the pandemic and all the chaos in the land market. But the land also went on the market officially, right? Not just privately, but it went on the market. And there was a real community upswell. I had 75 or 100 emails from folks in Penobscot, some unsolicited donations, some, a lot of phone calls, asking us to act on this and to preserve this piece of property, which had been unofficially open for public access for decades by the Allen family. And things had changed by 2021 for us as well. The Conservation Fund was now a potential partner, and they have bought the land and are holding it for us while we fundraise. The other thing that happened is that you all got refunded, and that opened up a pathway, a potential pathway anyway, for making this project happen. And I know I've heard other people say it today, and I'm going to say it again too. The LMF is really important for energizing conservation, not just funding conservation, but energizing conservation in the state. So this is 336 acres of fee land with an appraised value of $800,000. And as I said, the Conservation Fund has purchased it. We have an agreement with them to purchase it at that value. We are seeking $400,000 from LMF, and that's out of a $1.2 million budget. There's a large long-term stewardship cost to this property, excuse me, because of the blueberry fields and because of wanting to keep the blueberry fields open, or at least in large part. With LMF funding, and I'll anticipate the partial funding question, we're pretty committed to this project no matter what. We're all in. We've raised about $500,000 at this point, and we were going forward. But with LMF funding, I'm pretty confident that we can get this wrapped up this year. Excuse me?
You say this year?
I'm hoping. I'm an optimist. So, as Laura said, second highest peak on the peninsula, an amazing view, kind of a turnkey project for recreational purposes. There's a whole system of old, roads on the property that are open for walking. Really, all we have to do is build trail access about less than a quarter mile across town property to get up to our property. We have that easement in place for the trail. We have to expand a parking lot. That easement is in place as well. The property will be open for hiking and birding and berrying, for hunting. There's a great deal of ecological value to this property as well, particularly since it's a mix of forest land and fields going upslope. It has a lot of climate resiliency attached to it for our part of the world anyway. So our stewardship plan at this point is to open it up for hiking and public use, and then really to do a management assessment on the fields to see how much of this area we are going to try and keep open. This was, or is really a highly productive blueberry field. The Allen family took, I think Annie said, 250,000 pounds of blueberries off this in 2016. Because it's steep and rocky, it's a hand-picked field, and it just wasn't economically viable for them. So there's certainly an opportunity for public berry picking. I'm not sure what the other opportunities are on the property, but we're going to investigate those. And then finally, I'll say the long-term conservation plan is to try and make a connection between our existing parcel and this project parcel. With that, I will conclude.
Thank you. Questions, Barbara?
Did you secure the Forest Service grant? Is that?
That's pending.
That's still pending?
Yeah.
When do you expect to hear?
I think we're going to hear in June. at least unofficially in June.
Be a part of your match potential.
Potentially part of the match. We have match funds on hand at the moment. But yes, that would be a potential
Nice.
match. And then,
And-
yeah.
And you mentioned trails. These would all be non-motorized trails that would be on the property.
Yeah, so there's not a great deal of ATV activity on the mountain. There are people who go from one side of the mountain to the other, on ATVs. And, I don't have a really good answer we're not going to lock the gate on them, but I think this is going to be a sort of management as you go sort of, model. We'll see what it turns into, and then we'll figure out how we have to react to it. But as one of the locals said to me, he said, all the people who ride ATVs around here are all in their 50s, so it's not, they're not ripping it up. So I think we have to take that, seriously.
Seems like this could be a real interesting appraisal property, the blueberries, how they fit into it. You said there was an earlier appraisal
Yeah.
and it effectively just need to be updated? Is that?
So it was done Jesse did the first appraisal in 2019, early 2019, and it came in at 790. And then he updated that last May or June. And it came in at 800. So the property went on the market as a kingdom lot. And I think that's the way he appraised it more than anything.
Other questions? Seeing none. Just one bit of advice. Never anticipate a board question that hasn't been asked at all today on ARPA funding. We won't hold it against you.
All right. That's what I get for watching the very first part of this meeting and then stepping in at the end.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Great.
Good job.
So back to the board. First, I want to thank staff for pulling together a really tight schedule. We're ahead of schedule by about 12 or 13 minutes right now. So that'll give people who are going to the LMF celebration tonight a chance to get there, get out and get there on time. Sarah, before I talk about that, do you have any business for the board?
I wanted to just briefly review our agenda for Thursday before we go, just to get everyone's mind kind of there. So that, are we in this room Thursday? Yes,
Yeah.
we are in our. I don't know.
This room is pretty heavily utilized
Yeah.
right now.
You could put things in my office on the second floor if you'd like.
All right, I'll just.
Okay, let's do that. And we'll
Okay. So just briefly to get your minds thinking about our next steps. We are meeting here on Thursday. It's a 9 to noon meeting, no lunch, bring snacks. Our primary task for the day is our consensus scoring process. So in order to do that, we need your scoring sheets tonight before you leave. Jason will take all of your scoring sheets, input them into a spreadsheet, and when we come back on Thursday, what you will see is the board average scores, and we will have highlighted those areas where we feel like there is probably a need for discussion. As I said in the beginning of the day, if there's a 2 or 3 point difference in the average makes sense and falls within our scoring, we probably won't discuss those. Just those areas where it's like, obviously, differences of understanding about something.
You want names or not want names?
We do want names.
We just put like our initials in the top right.
That's totally fine. Yep. You do not have to spell it. Catherine Robbins, I'll say it on every single one.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we will do that scoring in public.
We'll review those scores, discuss funding strategies. We touched on that briefly. Staff will have some ideas for you, and we will have a spreadsheet that is live that you can say, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? And we can try out some different ideas on that spreadsheet. We'll talk about available funds. We'll go into a lot more detail about money. That will be part of the strategy. We will then enter executive session. Executive session is where the board makes their funding decisions. We'll talk about why we do that in executive session. And then we will come out of executive session, and you'll quickly recall from January, we announced the projects and the total funding allocations. We do not announce award by project. Applicants are more than welcome to come and talk to me personally, and I'll whisper your amount in your ear, and you'll go away knowing what your award was. That will all be followed up with award letters and any conditions that the board places, funding conditions that the board may place on a project. So that's what we are going to accomplish. It is a tight schedule, so staying really focused on the scoring during the scoring process is important. And I'm curious to see if a half day is enough time. You know, we're trying it out, and if you all tell me next time, make it longer, that's what we will do. That's that.
Ask a question. Do you want the minutes from today, or separate minutes for tomorrow, or do you want them all together?
They will be separate minutes, but you do not need to finish them. You know, like the board won't vote on them until July, so you can get them to me after the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. The last bit of business is I've hinted on it about this twice. There is a celebration for Land for Maine Future tonight in Brunswick. And we are in the middle of a scoring and funding process. And so I just want to remind the board that we have a very high, obviously we have a very important fiduciary responsibility here. You have to maintain a very high standard. So there could be opportunities from people who are maybe wanting to talk to you about their particular proposal, and doing it frankly very innocently, not thinking about the fact that we are in the middle of a process. So I would encourage you all to make sure if any proposal is being brought up, just to say, hey, let's talk to somebody else about that. We can't have conversations around that. So I just wanted to make sure I was reiterating that is clearly articulated within the agreements that were signed today.
We can talk about total number of projects and total request, right? Like 20
During your
projects.
speech tonight, you can reference 20. What did you say earlier today about the excitement? Because she's going to plagiarize everything. Energize. So, yes, absolutely. We can
That's
set that.
public
That's all
information.
public. Yeah.
You invited to this thing?
People, yeah, all board members should have been invited. It's in Brunswick Landing. It's being put on by the coalition. I think TNC and others are. Flight deck.
Yeah.
Oh, the flight deck.
Which is right on Route 1.
No, it's part of the old Air Force base.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
Navy base. And what time?
Pizza's provided.
5 o'clock.
Provided.
Yeah.
Roger, I was gonna go and I can't.
So don't talk about stuff tonight, Jim.
I don't know, I bet
So with that, I want to.
Know your limitations, Jim.
I want to thank the board. This has been a lot to go through today. I don't know about all of you, but I know I will suffer greatly tomorrow from sitting all day in this chair. So let's go home. Let's think about the agenda for over the next 24 hours as we start thinking about Thursday, because we do have a lot of work to do in a very short time frame as we come together on Thursday morning. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good job, folks. Very good job.